Hey everybody, how's it going? The Modern Native here. Today I'm going to be talking about camp safety. Most people call it the 5 W's, but I kind of added another one, and it worked out to be a W, so we're calling it the 6 W's. First off, right off the bat, water. Water is one of the main things when it comes to safety. It's a resource, but it also can be your enemy, because if you look behind me, you know, we camp by the creek a lot, and we've been having a lot of heavy storms, and you got to watch that water level, because at any point in time, something upstream, downstream can flood or break, and all of a sudden the water line's creeping up to your tent, and you got to cut bait and run before you get flooded out. So it's awareness, you watch your flood lines, and what I'll show you in a minute is also, when you need to, dig an emergency trench. If you check it out right here, during one of the storms we had, camp was starting to flood out and it was just a huge pond forming, so I dug a little bit of a trench, just enough to allow the water to flow that way. So it's a good idea if you, when you start flooding out and you need to make that emergency trench, you look for where it is on your lowest point, so you don't have to disturb nature that much, and you can just do a little divot to allow the water to flow out. I'm going to cover 2 for 1 here. Wildlife, and the one I added, Wanderers. Now, dog takes care of both of those for me for the most part, and I have an understanding with the critters around here. They've seemed to left us alone, so it's pretty cool. But when it comes to protecting yourself against wildlife and wanderers, which I kind of consider them the same thing, human wanderers are those visitors down your secluded trail or down into your wildlife camp that you got, or even down in a campground when you're camping. Now, when it comes to, there's 2 different kinds of etiquettes. You have a campground etiquette, where you guys are essentially neighbors and it's polite etiquette to go and meet your neighbor. And then you have secluded camping, where the point of secluded is seclusion. So you go out there to camp by yourself, to be away from people and everything else. Doesn't mean you're not friendly, but most of the time, kind of just, if you meet somebody on the trail, you meet somebody down at the water, that's one thing. But don't invite yourself into someone's camp. That's just the etiquette on that. When it comes down to it, you never know who you're going to be walking in on, because people who like seclusion generally do that for reasons. They either are antisocial, they may have social anxieties, they may have a reactive animal. He's perfectly good with people, but some people have an aggressive animal that they can't take to campgrounds, but it's part of the family, so they accommodate and they go to secluded campgrounds. Then you also have people with reactivity as far as person is reactive. People with PTSD, people with history of issues, people with issues in their past where they've been attacked or whatever else, and you never know who you're dealing with. So, and you don't want to surprise someone when it comes to camping, because as a general rule, there's generally a cutting tool, weapon, something with everybody at any point in time when you're out in the woods. So you don't want to surprise someone like that and get yourself hurt, and then you're going to try to say he's the asshole, but I mean, he was in a secluded area, you surprised him, and he reacted. It happens. A lot of times that happens. But not to say that camping isn't safe and isn't fun and that it isn't a social experience, but there are times when you need to abide by certain etiquette, and that means giving people their space, giving people the chance to offer up the opportunity to introduce yourselves and to meet each other. But don't cut through people's camps, even in a campground. That's just rude. I've seen a lot of that on Facebook. People have been talking about people cutting through their campsite. There is a path, there is a road, then there's campsites. Learn the difference, because there's a lot of people out there complaining about it, and that's not what this is supposed to be about. Just go out there and have fun and give people their space. COVID is still a thing, no matter what people want to say. COVID is still a thing, so social distancing should still be going on. So Don't just cut through someone's camp because maybe they're taking the opportunity to not have their personal protective equipment on, their face masks or whatever, and they're immunocompromised and they're hanging out in a secluded area, and you come through and you cough and you didn't know it, you're carrying the virus, and now you just got someone sick who's gonna die. So that's just a thought. But anyway, past all that. When it comes to the wildlife, if you don't have a dog that can deter wildlife from being away from you, or at least alert you when something comes near, you can do a hang bag. That's just hanging the string up in the tree and tying it out. If you use a thinner diameter cord, you won't have to worry about small and medium-sized critters climbing down the rope, like I've seen some people talking about when they hang their hang bag. They got the food in the bag, hung up over the branch, and it's tied off, but raccoons or other critters will climb up the tree, go across the branch, and climb down the rope. The micro cord I use is a 100-pound test, so unless you have over 100 pounds of food, that should be more than enough for you to toss up and over and hang your rope, or hang your hang bag with your food in it away from camp, and not have to worry about something being able to climb down that, because they can't get grip on it, they'll fall right off, or they can't even see it because it's like hair tie thin. So, but also with wildlife, to try to keep them away from your camp, avoid perishable foods, and if you do, cook everything, burn everything that you don't cook, and wash all of your pans as soon as you can, or you will have critters climbing on your stuff while you're sleeping. I burn everything that can burn because everything can. So other than that, I wash it off, boil it off, and then burn it off. It all avoids smells, traveling too far, and everything else. And yeah, that's wildlife and wanderers. So I consider them kind of the same category, but I added the 6W. Alrighty, so we're moving on to Widowmakers, and Cole Cracker calls them nature torpedoes. I call them javelins, but we'll get to that. See the tree up here? This was the tree that was right next to our camp originally before we readjusted things and decided to stop going there, because I noticed that the tree had been abused for quite a bit of time by previous people, and it wasn't doing so healthy. You can see how there's not many trees or not many leaves on it, and it just wasn't doing too good. So it was either going to fall or it was going to drop its branches on us, which is what I call the javelins, and that's when the branch falls and skewers into the ground. Cole Cracker, I caught his video, and it was right at the same time in the middle of filming this that I was like, oh man. But he calls them torpedoes when they're shooting down into the ground. I call them javelins because if you've watched it fly off the tree and arc, it looks like a javelin flying down, skewers. It's nuts. But that's why we moved that one. Let's see if I can get a good view of this one up here. So the tree directly behind me with all the leaves, right here, it's hanging over the tent setup. Now I did that because that is a really young, healthy tree, and it doesn't have a lot of damage or breakage, but it has a really wide expanse of foliage to catch. Focus. There's 3 dead branches up there that I'm getting a little concerned about with these storms coming through, and they're hanging over just sort of in range of the tent. So I've been a little concerned about it, but with this catch tree here, I call it a catch break, because it just is widely expanded right over that the tent where those branches would fall. So to me, I feel a little more secure about that, and plus she sleeps on the side that's more covered, so it reduces the risk. We do still risk a little bit of damage to the tent, but it's the best spot for it, and I've been watching it. If I start hearing creaking or seeing some cracking, or if one of them drops, we'll move and readjust. Speaking of moving, big update soon. But so the javelins, I'm sure people have seen it, and you can check out Cole Cracker's most previous Cole Cracker Bushcraft. His most previous video is about the trees that can kill you, and he goes into real good depth about the torpedoes, as he calls them, but the javelins. So he got really good pictures of it. I don't have good examples here of it because half of them look like trees. So unless I start going around trying to pull out dead stuff out of the ground, I'm not going to tell. And I'm trying to preserve this area. So that's just that. If you want to see good examples of that, go check out his video. But I have a really good example of a Widowmaker. This guy, he's been cracked for quite a while, and if you look, he extends all the way up. This is all the way away from our camp, and this is leaning in the opposite direction, going downstream. We would not set up anywhere near this, just simply the fact that even if that falls that way, it can still put stress on those trees and knock it into the clearing there where we would have camped if that was going to be the spot we were going to choose. So when you have to think about that, it's not just the tree that's going to fall is the Widowmaker. It's the tree that it is going to drop with it, or the branches. So there's that on Widowmakers. And I'm going to cover weather and wind in the same thing. Now, I had mentioned something before about knowing the wind direction. Now, around here, hi buddy, around here, the wind, I'm trying to explain how this goes, because it's really weird. So, you see that the creek flows down behind me, and goes behind the camp, goes downstream. Now, the way the valley or gully is formed, the wind almost predominantly goes from up there or from up there, or from down there. It either goes in either direction. So because I position myself on this tree, and this tree, take you over here, and I gave myself that diamond formation, it protects me well enough from the wind and the weather so I don't have to worry about it. So even though I've got this huge this major height going on, and people have asked me about the side wind and everything, when it has been downpouring, you can literally see that the line cuts right through here, and you can't tell, or you can't tell right now because it's the moisture in the air has kind of made everything moist and damp and looking, but the ground would have a dry line exactly 6 inches away from my footprint on the ground that holds that I use as a footprint to keep my stuff clean and dry so I can change and stuff. So that dry line perfectly goes right around my little footprint. So if you get it set right, you don't have to worry about the side blow or whatever else from major storms coming through or major wind. Last night we had some major wind coming through with a huge thunderstorm. It was awesome. If he wasn't already on top of me, passed out in the hammock, I would have got some awesome video last night, but I couldn't reach my phone because his fat ass was pinning me down. But, alrighty, so that was my camp safety video, and that's just like the generalized where you set up camp, how you set up camp, safety. I'll be going further into tool safety and stuff like that, but that's a whole lot of rigmarole to go into. So I wanted to do one snapshot of camp safety. Weather, wind, water, wildlife, Widowmakers, and Wanderers. My 6 W's of camp safety, not the 5 W's that everybody uses. Till next time, get out there, be a native, and go beast.